Hi YouTubers. So I really just wanted to talk about an issue, I guess, that something I felt a bit concerned about in myself. I notice sometimes that when people say things to me, some things that I deem demeaning, rude or insulting, that I feel this really intense anger sometimes surge inside me, like really intense, and I wonder if others must experience that same thing, and I guess so. But I sort of want to examine why that is, and how I can deal with that better, and sort of looking into what's actually the cause for that sort of anger within me, because it's not just like this feeling of anger. Sometimes depending on how I'm in control of myself, I'll lose my temper, I'll retaliate, I'll swear back, or I'll go on a long rant and shout loads of awful things. And I'll just spend ages sort of like really like shouting and mouthing off and saying awful things. And it's just totally unproductive. It wastes time and energy. And I recognise in hindsight afterwards, like how really wasteful, how stupid that is. That I'm just being a reactionary, and that to that extent that I'm under their control when I allow that. It sort of reminds me of when I was in the playground at school, and you have bullies that harass you there. And they'll say things to deliberately wind you up, and put downs and insults on a regular basis. So I guess the question I'm asking is, how do you cope with that? What I will realise, in hindsight, is how irrational my responses can often be. Where I'm sort of reacting, I'm allowing myself to get angry, to vent, and to basically, when I'm reacting like that, I'm under their control in that. Because I'm like a puppet, they can say one thing and cause a stream of emotions. They can say another thing, and really I should be more in control over what emotions that I have. So I think it's really down to emotional management and taking responsible control over the situation, being responsible for controlling myself more. And that's going to require effort. I have done that to a varying extent over the years. I will bite my tongue. I will keep quiet. I will try not to react. And I think what I've tried to do, sometimes successfully, but other times not, it's a sort of long time learning in progress. I seem to make steps forward only to retreat and make steps back. Progress is always followed by regress. It sort of seems like that with me. And where I've made the progress, it really seems like I take the time to stop and consider why I'm offended by what they're saying, or why I feel hurt, and to think about, is what they're saying actually true, and why are they saying these things? Well, you know what? If it's someone that I know regularly, and someone that I've seen and I've heard lots of insults on a regular basis, I might be able to say, I know that person's character. If they are insulting other people, not just me, if that's part of their nature, then I can easily conclude that that's their problem, that they have an issue. They like picking on people. They have got that sense of grandiose, a delusion of grandeur. They think they're above other people and have a sense of entitlement and a right to put others down. They look down on others. They want to put others down with these cheap insults. And it's a psychological method that they use, to keep you under an emotional control. That might well be true for some people, but it's not true in many other situations. And where we don't know the people well enough, we don't know their general character, we don't often have sufficient evidence to know what their reasoning is, or what their intent is as to why they're behaving and speaking to people as they do. It's only when we've known someone enough time that we can actually make that kind of verdict over them. But actually there can be many other reasons why someone might make insulting comments to you, or degrading comments, as it were. It might be that they don't view it as that. They might view it as a joke. They might see it as just a sort of their sense of humour. People do kind of have that, a very dark sense of humour sometimes. Where they won't understand or see how it's offending you. And you know what? if that situation happens and you're close to someone or you're acquainted and you feel it's appropriate, you can even point out and say why you feel it might be offensive, or you might sort of try and take it more lightheartedly and even have a laugh at it, perhaps. It might well be, though, that the thing that they say that has deeply upset you or you felt emotionally wounded by it might well be that there's a truth within it. You know, somebody might say, oh, greedy, meaty or something, and it might well be that you do have a tendency to sort of stockpile and to sort of try and take more than you might need. And so, or somebody might say, make a joke about someone having a temper and being quick to temper. And it might well be that what they're saying, the reason that we can be insulted by someone is there could be a degree of truth in it. It's often the truth hurts, isn't it? So it can be that, of course. And of course that requires a self-assessment and saying, okay, what are my faults? And when we take ownership of our faults and we can say, okay, that allows us to say, right, I do have those problems and I acknowledge I have got some issues. I've got some issues with confidence myself because of issues that I've had in the past, and that's something I need to work on. Getting more comfortable at speaking to people in different situations and in different circumstances. So I think we've all got different issues to learn, and if we fail to recognise and acknowledge those, then it does allow other people to have that power over us sometimes, because when we acknowledge that we do have those issues, we at least have the chance then to begin to work on those. We can't find solutions for things unless we confirm and realise they're problems to begin with. So that at least allows us in that acknowledgement to say, okay, well, I'm going to investigate that and see what can I do to improve that situation. How can I actually try and learn? What methods can I use? What techniques? What can I do in actions to actually try and improve that fault of mine? And that's something we can pray about, we can meditate about, we can talk to other people and get counselling about, or we can investigate and research and look at various documentaries or articles or journals that might help us on it too. And we can also write and read and paint and sculpt and try to express ourselves in artistic form to try and sort of discover how we feel about it and put that into and put that outside of ourselves, externalise what our inner feelings are on a subject more. But there of course could be other reasons as well why we might feel hurt by how other people treat us. It might not be that there's any validation in what they're saying, of course. It might well be for other reasons too. It could well be that we've been hurt before. It could well be that we've been hurt and slandered or degraded or mocked by many people. I suppose if you feel that lots of people are doing that and on a regular basis and perhaps over a long period of time, that's a much harder to deal with than if it's a one-off thing, if it's a one-off occurrence that's very occasional. It's quite normal to have one-off, very occasional times when there'll be rudeness or when someone will be really insulting to us. That's quite understandable and that's normal, and that's something we'll all deal with regularly anyway. But it is a more extreme challenge to face when you have got lots of insults and a massive amount of them, perhaps on a regular scale, where there may even be a conveyor belt of that. And there could be different reasons. It could be that you've done something genuinely awful that's upset and provoked a large number of people, and they're all doing it perhaps some of them in retaliation to you. It could be that it's something that they perceive you do as wrong, but it's not. Something that looks suspicious, even if you're innocent. And so they think they're getting you back for something that you haven't actually done. And so that in itself can be really hurtful. I think in the case of the former, where you feel people are getting you back for something you have done, perhaps trying to be honest and take ownership and trying to reassure people that, you are changing, you recognise the wrong, you do want to transform, and you do want to actually repair those relationships with others by giving them that respect if you haven't done that in the past. But where it's something that you haven't done wrong and people have actually taken it wrongly and they've misinterpreted what you've done, I think perhaps trying where able to explain the reasons for that, and trying to sort of be more sort of communing to people and to explain, this is actually what happened. I know it may look like something else, because oftentimes if you explain the actual circumstances, at least some people might listen, and it might sort of help resolve the issue for them, if not perhaps for others. But of course, it may well be that in some situations you can't really explain it. It may be strangers that say things to you in passing, and you can't go up to everyone and sort of say, did you say that to deliberately provoke you? And they may, that they may well deny it in any case. There are loads of methods by which you can actually say things to people that have got a double meaning. So it could be that the method that they say it's hard to prove whether it's being said to deliberately upset you or whether it's actually being said for some other reason. To give you one technique that could employ that method, they could be talking to someone else that's quite close to you, but it's so loud that it's something you're bound to overhear. And so that although they're talking to someone else near you, the words they're actually saying, they're meaning for you, and they want you to interpret. You can't prove that they're saying that to upset you or that those words are deliberately provocative. If you went up to them and asked them, you'd be the one that looks stupid in that case, and they could just easily deny it and say, don't be ridiculous. Now, where we use double meanings, double entendres as they're called in French, there's even triple and quadruple meanings sometimes. That can be done by accident on purpose, and sometimes the purpose of that can be a good one, sometimes it can be a bad one, and sometimes in between. But where it's actually a bad one, if someone's done it over a long time and deliberately to you, you might be able to say, look, I'm aware of what you're doing, and I know, and I'm conscious of it. And you might even be able to try and reason with them and appeal to their better nature. But it might not have any effect either. They might not, you've got to sort of bear in mind, somebody might not want to improve. They might think very low of you, or they might not realise how it's affecting you in actual fact. But it might be, depending on the situation, worthwhile at least trying. But in other situations, it might not be. So there are a variety of different methods by which some people can actually provoke you. And some of those methods are so kind of insidious that you can't really take anyone to task. You can't, because like I said, you can't prove that actually what they're saying is done to upset you, because it could easily be that it's actually just being said as a part of a normal conversation. If it has got that double meaning, you don't know which meaning is actually being intended, and we don't often always know either why they're doing it, what is actually their intent. So I would come on to my closing points now. I think that we must make an effort not to assume what someone's purpose is. Someone might have good intentions or bad, but we don't know always. Sometimes we might have a good suspicion and we might be pretty sure, but sometimes we can also make mistakes in our assessments, in our judgments on others. So it can look very suspicious. Someone could look like they're doing it for a bad reason, but it could actually be a good thing. Conversely, someone might look like they're doing it for a good reason, but it could actually turn out that they had bad intentions after all. So we're not inside their head. We haven't lived their entire lives. We haven't been a witness to all the hours, the days, the weeks, the months, the years, the decades, the lifetimes that they've lived. So we don't really know if that's in character for them. We don't know their circumstances always, the people that are around them, that influence them. So we're not able to judge them necessarily. If you remember in school, people that were bullying others, sometimes they had been victims of bullying themselves and were only doing to others what had been done to them. Other people were only doing it to fit in with the bullies because it was easier for them, or because they indeed felt intimidated to do that themselves. So it could be that other people have reasons. They could have had mental health problems. They could have had sort of like attachment issues. We don't necessarily know unless we're privy to all the information of how they are as a person over a long period of time. We often don't know. And so sometimes it's giving yourself up to that not knowing, being agnostic about other people and saying, okay, I don't know the reasoning of why they sometimes say things, however insulting it might be, you know, and so it's not my position to judge them for that. I just have to shrug my shoulders sometimes and say, okay, it happens, you know, move on. And I think it's that ability to sort of move on swiftly and not dwell and obsess about things too much. And I certainly have that tendency to do that too much. But I think when you are being influenced by people so much of the time, it could be that you're living with someone a long time and they're saying lots and lots of things on a daily basis that upset you. So, you know, it's not just move on, it's a stranger, I won't see them again. It's, okay, you're going to have to live with that, but you don't have to live with assuming you know why they're doing it. You know, you don't have to live with being angry and obsessively angry over it. Okay, even if you are annoyed briefly, even if you feel upset briefly, the feelings might come to pass. You know, so you don't have to sort of like dwell on that. Sometimes it's resolving and making an effort to deal with those issues. How I would liken it in a metaphor, I suppose it's like going through some sort of like quicksand or mud. Quicksand is the best metaphor there. So you're wading through this quicksand, and if you stop to dwell on the anger and sort of think about it too much, you know, you might sink into it, and it might sort of like catch you, and you sort of like you're surrounded by it suddenly, because you're dwelling and obsessing about it suddenly, because you're looking back at that insult and you're saying, oh, now he's done it here and he did it yesterday, and what about what he said last month and this and that, and you're just sort of obsessively thinking about it. Whereas if you sort of make an effort, strive, push forward through the quicksand, you know, and you've got to sort of have effort to do that, then you can sort of resolve it, getting through those issues and coming out the other side. And it's often putting it in context. It's often saying, I don't know the situation to judge that person well enough. Okay, it's looking at it and saying, can I make an effort to resolve the issues and to discuss where I'm upset? Are there any practical things that can be done there? Am I able to assess how I deal with those issues afterwards? How I'm in control of my feelings, whether they'll be doubt or confusion, anger or sadness, or even contentment. I might say, I'm confident enough to know myself, and I know what my abilities are. You know, I know that I've been cowardly in some things. I know that I've been brave in some things, because I know over the years all the different circumstances that I've been under. And so I'm that confident in knowing myself, having done sufficient self-analysis, that I'm not going to be offended if somebody tries to put me down in something, because I know myself better than they know me. And I know that I've got a lot of work to do to improve my conduct. I know that I've had failures and successes in the past, and I know that I'm working in progress, and I've got a lot more still to do. And I also know that they do, and that we all do as people too. And I think it's recognising that as well. What the temptation is to get into doing, sometimes at least, for me, there's the temptation to dwell on anger and sadness about this. You know, why do so many people think so many negative things about me, perhaps? Well, you know what? It's wrong to be so conformed by what other people think of us. You know, there are people in the world that don't care what anyone thinks about them. You know, that's a psychopathic feeling towards humanity, and that's wrong. We need to care about each other's feelings sometimes, but it is keeping it in balance. You know, if we don't care enough, we lack empathy, we lack adequate concern and compassion for others, you know, then we fail to live up to our true worth and our true potential of being a human, of having and recognising that human worth, that right, that validity of other people. But on the same scale, oppositely, if we give other people too much credit, too much value, if we buy into their estimation of us too much, then we're conformed by their beliefs over us. Then they have power over us. And we can be led any which way if this group thinks this, we'll think that about ourselves. If another group thinks something, we'll think what they think, and we will just be like a tumbleweed blowing in the wind, taken in any direction, pushed in any direction according to whatever way the wind happens to be blowing. And it's really no good. We need to be grounded, we need to be solid, we need to be sure and certain, but we can't be any of those things unless we take time each day on a regular basis to examine ourselves, to question ourselves. Who am I? Well, what are my abilities? What were my actions in life? What were my conduct in these situations? What were my failings in those? How did I do wrong? How could I improve myself? Where do I need to improve myself in the future? And it's by asking these type of questions and searching to have honest answers, making a commitment to improve our conduct towards each other and indeed towards the world in general. And striving to be that, to being more honest to others, to being more encouraging to others, to having more courage, to being more brave, to being more compassionate also towards others. And it's in striving to improve our conduct and taking responsibility. And I believe it's trying to do that, each of us. I know that's where we're going to improve ourselves. That's where we're going to have the chance to actually overcome this power that other people have to insult us. Because we then know, okay, I do have faults. Yes, you're quite right to look down on me at that. But I can look down on you for your faults. We can all look down on each other for our faults. Because we all, as humans, are faulty. Well, none of us are infallible. We all make mistakes. We all do wrong things on purpose. We can all be lazy. We can all be greedy and envious and bitter and driven by vengeance or anger. Or we can all be mean towards other people. We can all lack courage. We can all have cruelty about us or selfishness. We can all have a variety of different issues, and everyone does. So even if other people can look down on you, you could look down on them. But now that comes back to a really important point, and I think I'm going to end on this point because it's probably the most important thing, that just as we can be insulted by others, we too have that power to insult others too. So we need to be cautious what our words are. Good words that are compassionate, considerate, and encouraging can actually help someone. They can counsel someone. They can help someone heal and to know where their faults are and to know what their virtues are. To bring someone up that's got a low self-esteem, to show them they have got right and they have got worth and validity in their life, and to perhaps show someone that thinks they're holier than thou or they're driven by arrogance, that they too have faults, they too have flaws that they need to work on as well as us, And so I think we need to be cautious how we talk to other people, knowing that words can heal, but words can harm. We could insult other people too. We could use their faults in a savage way to harm them. In an argument, I'm all too tempted to do that. When someone is insulting me, I could trade insult for insult, put down for put down. But why sink and descend to that level? We've got to try and arise above that, however difficult that can sometimes be. And I know it is. I struggle with that. So I think my lesson in that is trying to sort of talk to other people better, to try and be more mindful about how my conduct and how I speak to other people is. And also not to be so conformed by other people. My tendency is to care too much for other people. Sometimes I'm a people pleaser. I like seeing people happy, but at the same time, I have to think about what's right, and just saying something to make someone happy, it does no good. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's wrong, isn't it? We need to also consider, what's true. If telling someone a lie about a situation makes them happy, I don't want to comfort someone with some deception. I'd rather hurt them with the truth, but I'd rather do that hopefully in a sensitive way that considers their needs, that considers their emotional needs and how they would best benefit from that. And I suppose it comes down to really to treat other people how you would want to be treated. That's the that's putting everything into a short sentence, isn't it? Really. So I've got that lesson still to learn. I recognise that from today. That I have got to try and not be so reactionary according to what everyone thinks. It's good that I care what other people think, but I need to learn to assess that, to discern more, and to not be so quick to anger or to sadness, but to actually take the time to properly assess why people might think that and what is a proper response to that.